Hello. How's everybody doing tonight? Think we should be live. Let me know if the the sound quality and everything's okay. Been sick a bunch, kind of off and on, so my voice is not the best, but it's interesting. I felt like making a video for the last few days, and I planned on and I told people I would occasionally make videos when I had something I wanted to talk about. And now I don't feel that much like talking about what I was planning on talking about, which is the title of the video. So I don't know. We may talk a little bit about that. We may just hang out. Some of our friends here. People can ask questions. I guess I'll start by just talking a little bit about I I've had some really interesting conversations with some people who are what I would consider, far more experienced kind of industry experts of sorts, people who have had like high up, executive positions at WotC or Pokemon or Tops or, Fanatics and getting a lot of their takes on what do they think about the general card market. I think when we think about like the future of the Pokemon market and these types of things, we can always, on lots of channels take time breaking down, um, which one, which set, which era, et cetera, et cetera. I certainly have done my share of having those conversations. But I think the most important question, which is maybe a hard question to answer, is that more sort of macro level kind of like, you know, is the general interest and demand for cards in general going to increase, over the next 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years? Is the general interest, in Pokemon specifically going to increase? And we're talking, specifically about the physical cards, or is interest and demand going to go to other things, or other, and then what are these companies, what are these businesses, what are the card companies doing, and then what are the big player, the auction houses, the whatnots, the eBays, all the TikToks, getting in on it. Uh, where is the sort of where's the live selling of the element? Where's the words? Where is the live selling uh, part of this hobby going to go, and how much is that going to grow? Obviously, that's been a big topic in all of commerce for like a year plus, probably 2, 3 years, and when you compare the numbers that China has been doing versus the US in terms of just like a general live selling. And there are plenty, you can find plenty of experts on both sides of this issue, but there are plenty of experts who say that shopping in general, and including card shopping and all sorts of things, are going to have a lot more, and increasingly so, of this online, immediacy component, and that's going to drive demand even more. My question is, how much is all that technology? How long is all that technology going to really take? How good is it actually going to be? Because you have to understand that a lot of the people who are selling this stuff, like, they're selling a product that they own. They have their own bias in it being revolutionary. Now, of course, it can actually be, and I think there's good reason to think why some of this stuff can be revolutionary or change these spaces. But as a regular guy, regular person, like we are all here, it can be hard to, or impossible really, to know exactly who to listen to, and to predict really what's going to happen with any sort of certainty that you can make smart investments on. And I think, now, talking to these experts, these people that I would consider, not only just the individuals are very, bright, kind of seem like generally caring, honest, very interested in sort of the long-term health of these things are not the types of people who seem just like interested in like short-term sort of selling me something so that I will do something for them. The types of people where you feel like they're constantly all business is like transactional and not for like long-term sustained kind of partnerships, but sort of short-term quick gain and taking advantage of others, that type of thing. And like and these people, are very generally speaking, are very bullish about the card world and about these companies continuing to put lots of money into it and new people starting new card games I've talked to, people starting new auction platforms I've talked to, people starting new grading card companies I've talked to. And as I said before, of course, they have a potential bias in being bullish, even if they are being very honest and giving their honest opinion, it might be tinged with a sort of hopefulness. And I always like to say also to all of you guys, people who might have some sort of like financial interest in this whole thing or just are also just collectors like me and wanted to thrive and succeed because it's a really fun hobby for us and a place for us to like hang out and enjoy it with other people. And we want to make some money on our hobby, or at least not buy into FOMO and hype and like lose massive amounts of money and have like a terrible time. um I think for us it's important to be aware of those biases. And my biases, and part of why I stopped making videos, there were a number of reasons why I stopped making videos. Probably the main reason was just like I felt like I was just repeating myself over and over again and not saying it, not making any new arguments. I have hundreds and hundreds of videos, you know, um, and getting bored of myself talking. But the other reason I stopped was because when I decided to go full time into Pokemon reselling, um, I have my own even increased bias now that all these things are successful and that all of these companies are going to be successful and we're all going to be successful together. There are plenty of stories in history where that is not the case. So I just want to make that clear, I guess, before, you know, going into it, any further, that I have a lot of like fun and enjoyment and like money riding on the success, of all of this. And so I'm going to be looking for data and details that probably reaffirm, you know, reaffirm that. And I love having these conversations with these very optimistic, positive people who are far more experienced and knowledgeable than me. I mean, these are people who have 40 years in the industry and know the inner workings of like these companies that we speculate on, right? Like what are they really doing behind the scenes, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so I think their opinions are extraordinarily valuable, but experts either, you can always find experts on both sides of things, and you can often, experts are often wrong. So anyway, long rambling caveat. So what they've been saying to me, generally speaking, and what I've been feeling and seeing in the market is like basically only positive. I- you know, I think a decent amount of the negativity is in the world, in general, with lots of things. Like there are very real, um, tragedies happening on the global scale at all times. But like in lots of people's lives, I think a lot of the negativity and the sort of drama of it all is a lot of that comes from like boredom, and people have heard all the arguments before. People are regurgitating everything before, and people want, if things are not exciting and things are not booming and things are not obviously amazing, things are bad, rather than looking at the numbers, which like Pokemon is printing so much and it's selling quite well. Um, there are so many new businesses opening up all the time that, as long as they're not overreaching, they're doing extremely well in this space. My Pokemon business and what I've been able to do in a short amount of time, has surprised me, honestly. The amount of interest and buying from and from collectors, right? From people who, again, I look to them as like, is this a sustainable thing? And myself as a huge collector. Like, do we still like this stuff? Are we still searching for things? Are we still excited to buy the stuff and add new things to our collection? Or is now that the a lot of the stonking gone, or some of the stonking gone, I mean, there's still a lot of that. Terrible term. I never would have used that word before before I came onto YouTube and started talking here. But all of that sort of fear of missing out. You know, again, we talked endlessly about this stuff. The sort of people buying things primarily to make money, not because they want the item. Primarily hoping that they're going to go up, etc. Um, I think things are in a very promising space. One area of the market that I think is interesting, or it's like what is going to happen there, is the sort of live breaking, live selling, and connected to that, the sealed kind of ultra modern product that's being ripped, and then other product that's being ripped, from middle era to vintage. Obviously, I'm not super in on the numbers at this point of like how much vintage is being ripped or how much like middle era is being ripped. But certainly tons and tons of ultra modern is being ripped. Sword and Shield, um, Scarlet and Violet. I'm sure tons and tons of Sun and Moon, and then kind of less and less as we go back up, probably quite a bit more Watsy than some of the middle era stuff, etc. Based on just like the amount that was printed of all these things, the amount of these booster boxes that are left. Gambling and thinking about this hobby and like breaking down who's in it into a lot of different categories, right? We have people who are kind of, let's say, in these different markets, right? Like the sealed product market, the sealed pack market versus the singles. I don't care what it grades, market, as long as it looks decent in the binder. From the very like, I want my binders to be perfect and I need perfect cards, all the way to people who are like, it could be the more damage the better because I can get it cheaper. Individuals engaged in the market, to the people who are grading in order to try and make a profit, on those cards, to the people who are buying those graded cards because they feel like it's a good deal or it's cheaper than trying to grade it themselves, and or for an investment, purposes or something, or long-term speculation. Obviously, you can be a combination of a lot of different those things. Like myself, I do all of those things. Um, uh, Trying to break down what parts of those markets, which part of those many different markets do we think is going to grow the most? And which parts do we think are going to shrink the most when we start? Because there are two important conversations in sort of trying to predict the long-term future, right? The first is sort of the macro level. Will cards and will physical collectibles, and specifically cards within physical collectibles, remain, will demand grow, or, grow for that over time? One. And then two, within the Pokemon market, how are all these different things being sold, and and are those platforms going to grow those types of things and need more of that product for that platform? And then, of course, all of those platforms can only grow at the end of the day if there are actual consumers at the end who will continue to buy the product and consume the product for one reason or another. And when we're thinking about that, I can give I can give guesses, and I can tell you guys what executives think, and what people who, I talked to about 4 or 5 people in the last few weeks, who have big stakes in the TCG world from a variety of different companies. And, you know, eh, one constant theme from all of them, it was the gambling aspect and the breaking aspect and the live auction, live selling aspect is going to be massive. Now, theoretically, every item in the Pokemon hobby could be, as these things potentially grow, if they do grow, could be um um enjoyable content, or enjoyable, people could be interested in buying it in that format. If you talk to people who are live streaming and live sellers, of course, rip and ships, buying, having sealed product and then opening it up and selling the individual packs and opening them up live potentially, or just even people even just, buying the sealed product, from someone they trust, or it's very easy and they can just click a button rather than shopping for it. There are people who love to gamble on those packs and love to buy that way, and the excitement of buying that type of item that way. Obviously a sealed booster box provides a lot of different options. And gambling, book I was recommended to by someone I talked to this week, they call them meta games. The games outside the actual TCG game, right? It's the game of, you have the actual game, the TCG game, and then you have all these other games that people are playing for social status, for getting those dopamine hits, for getting that rush, for getting that fun, that excitement, and that can be, right, the gambling elements, or it can be the having the right cards, the cool collection, et cetera, right? So with these live selling platforms, certainly that stuff sells really well. Also, what does incredibly well are these, like, any sort of sudden death, quick selling models. And this stuff has been, like, China and influencers in China have been, dabbling. I mean, this has existed for a long time, right? I mean, QVC, we used to have this, on TV. It's not so different. It's much easier and much more personal, and people develop much more of a personal relationship now because of the social media component, which is part of what makes this a lot more effective. You're not just buying from, like, a stranger on TV, or even someone that you watch every night on QVC, but you're buying from people you can actually talk to, you can reach out. There's a contact information. You see them at conventions, you have conversations. Other people can vouch for them. You have, like, communities built around them, right? Discords, all sorts of things built around them that builds all sorts of trust and fun and enjoyment and relationships that add, like, so much value to the experience, right? But these like sudden death auctions, these these and even regular auctions where it restarts, there's quite a bit of interest and engagement in these things. And if you look across different markets, selling different things, numbers are generally increasing for all of that. And it will be, I don't there's a lot of execs at these companies, and there's a lot of people, and I have been, one thing, I've been talking about for a while, right, on this channel, when I was actually making videos like a year ago, was that, how little we knew, but how important it is to sort of watch what the larger companies are doing, and are they investing a lot of money into this, because they have a lot of data, that access data we don't. And they have, uh, uh, they have the biggest incentive to not necessarily increase the prices on the secondary market, but get them to a level where they're fairly sustainable, and certainly increase the number of people in the hobby and the number of people wanting to buy and consume. And theoretically, you know, supply being equal, that would increase the prices in the secondary market, at least for some things, right? So anyway, um when we actually do deep dives into the data, into what is going on, right? We're not seeing anything, I think, too surprising. And all of the areas I would say of the Pokemon market, generally speaking, are behaving in a fairly logical, reasonable, connected way. Generally speaking, in the sense, I'm sure I could find some outliers, but in the general sense, we're seeing stuff where not a lot of new supply is coming on the market. We are seeing that stuff slowly tick up in price or at least stop falling. Um, Stuff that more of it's constantly being printed, more of it's constantly being graded, more of it's constantly being auction, common sense stuff that we've talked about forever, right? Supply and demand stuff. Um, um, I don't think there's too much value in I don't see any like huge, like, oh, this is an area. I've always loved and I have like personal affinity for like certain, maybe like lower value, lower appreciated trophy cards, but I might just have a massive bias there. We're all gonna have sort of our biases on just what we think is cool and what we think is like relatively undervalued and doesn't make sense. But generally speaking, like the supply and demand, the actual like math behind the market is functioning and things are kind of things that were very high and had lots of were produced a lot are generally making sense where they are versus things that are a bit rarer overall. In my sort of general intuition, I did deep dives on the Patreon this month into the analytics and the numbers and the market cap of like 15 to 20 sets, big sets kind of throughout all the different eras. And that's generally what I've been feeling for a year, and generally that the data back that up. So what to do about all that? So I mean, I can only say like what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm just having fun with the hobby, and I'm just hoping that people continue to like it and enjoy being here. And I guess I'm just doing my part to, continue to the way to say it. So I have my business, which is like taking up a ton of my energy and my time, and it's been really fun to be very like um I don't know, driven or excited about that project, or I have a million things going on with that. And a lot of it's kind of scary, and I don't know if certain things are going to work, and I'm taking calculated risks and all that type of stuff, and that's like both really fun and exciting. Um but the collector Jake is loving what he's seeing. The collector Jake, like I've been collecting again more and more over the last year and I started probably collecting again maybe like a year and a half ago. I started buying up certain things, and I've just been feeling better and better about the things that I've been collecting and buying, from the standpoint of like, okay, it's less likely now that this is going to collapse like 70% to 90% in value again, and more along the lines of like, hey, like it feels cool to own this item. I don't feel anxious, and I feel good about buying the item at this price because I feel like I have the money to buy it and I really appreciate it and enjoy it. And the sort of the anxiety around collecting that I don't know how many of you guys may have felt when prices are kind of crazy and you don't really know what to expect. And should I be, there's the anxiety of like, should I be selling everything in my collection because these prices don't make sense to me? Flip-flopping with the anxiety of should I not buy anything else? I really want to keep collecting. I really want to keep engaging in the hobby, but I need I just think it's ridiculous, these prices. I just don't understand it. I don't believe, I don't trust, I don't value this. Um for anyone interested in like my business, I know I'm just like talking all over the place tonight. For anyone, if anyone has any questions or anything, I'm happy to answer those too as we go along. Uh, I guess I'm just rambling a bunch of thoughts that are hopefully fairly interesting or valuable to people and kind of wherever they're at in the hobby. As far as my business, like, business is booming. Um, it's scary because I'm taking big risks by buying lots of things and lots of inventory, and that's scary because I haven't converted all of that inventory into profit yet. Right now, it's like lots of stuff is like theoretical profit. And I'm partnering with someone this week who I respect and really like, and I don't want to let him down or his family down or my family down. And there's a lot of things in this space that feel very outside of my control, no matter how hard I work and no matter how smart the deals are and how good my analysis is. It's a very it's not it's a it, although I love the cards, it's a kind of a strange very yeah, difficult to control, difficult to predict environment, which is a bit of an odd fit for my more like game playing calculating personality, you know. Now that being said, some of that hard to predict stuff also and makes this an extremely lucrative business and possibility because the market is so unoptimized because there are so many different selling platforms, because prices are moving constantly everywhere, because there's so many different options. Like, if anyone's like a chess player out there, there's so many different possible moves, right? Like one can make, like when you look at investing or when you look at a market like this, there are so many different moves that I could make. Like I could go on right now and I could take $1,000 and I could put it into like probably literally like 100,000 different places, right? Like, maybe that's an exaggeration, but it wouldn't surprise me if there were like that many listings that I could theoretically put it in, or reach out, right, to a ton of different contacts I have about maybe I'll buy that from them and maybe I'll sell this to them. And you're sort of constantly, you're constantly moving this puzzle around, and you're making money, and you're looking for win-win situations where you're buying from someone who doesn't have your ability to sell it at a small, slightly higher, right? And then you're selling it to other people who can't, do the work or the effort, or it's hard, or it's not worth the time to track down those deals, or they just want a specific card and not the 5,000 copies of that card you just bought, Jake, like a crazy person. I've never had, I always used to look at Rusty TCA Gaming, someone, obviously, a ton of us in the Pokemon world really admire him for a variety of reasons, but one thing I never did was like the amount of duplicates, the amount of doubles, the amount of inventory, right, of the same thing. And the anxiety I always had, stuff like that. Like there were times when I have like 5 to 10 of a card, right? This man, will have 500, 1,000, right? Trusting the market to be able to buy up that many at a reasonable price, right? Because it's like, well, if I'm buying 500 of this card at 60% of the value, what if I start selling this and the market interest isn't that deep, and then I'm sort of selling against myself and I'm collapsing the market, right? These are all things that I'm a beginner at being a seller in this space, and really having a business and trusting and seeing firsthand kind of like what the market can take and what I should be buying and what I should be doing. And the chess play, like, it's, on the one hand, it's really simple. It's like buy low, sell high. On the other hand, as I said, there's like hundreds of thousands of combinations, billions of combinations, hundreds of billions of combinations if you go enough steps, right? And that's what makes it exciting and fun, and also like potentially lucrative if you can be very good at that game. Um, and Now the investing side, or where the market is going to go in the future, is important, because if you invest in too much inventory, or you invest in too big of a business, whether you're buying stores or hiring employees, or quitting other jobs to do this, right? You are invested in the long-term health of this market. You are investing in the long-term health of this market in that sense. You're not buying a product hoping that it doubles or triples to sell and make money, but you're investing that there will be people interested in buying what you have at a higher price, hopefully, or at least the same price that you paid for it, right? And so I think that's where the market interest comes for people who are building businesses, right? Now, Collector Jake, which is the reason I started this in the first place, and the reason I started selling Pokemon cards in the first place was to fund my expensive and ambitious collecting habits, my like competitive ambitious collecting habits of like wanting to own the biggest, most complete non-sports collection in the card collection in the world someday. I don't care if I ever have that. It's more just fun, to like, for me anyway. Maybe I'm a psycho, maybe I'm a weirdo with that, but it's fun for me to try and achieve that. It gives me kind of like a goal and a thing to work towards, right? Um, for me, the way I think about the investing side of the hobby is still at this point, I still have the same attitude. And that may, I know that attitude has bothered people in the past, but, and that attitude is I just don't think we know enough about these things to do any serious investing long term. And what I mean by that is buying things at market and then holding them and hoping to sell them above market versus flipping, reselling, or if you want to call it like short-term investing. Although I don't like the term investing for any of that, because really what you're trying to do is you're really more arbitraging than you are. Investing to me implies you actually want the value of it. The general market sentiment you think it's an undervalued thing generally in the market, and so even if you buy it at market, and you sell in the future, and it'll you'll be able to make more money. Now, the more the market goes up and continues to go up, right? Like my sitting inventory, whatever I'm not able to flip and resell immediately, will also go up. I hope prices go up slowly on everything. That would probably be the best for my business and also the best for my collecting. But how do I know if that's going to happen? How does anyone out there who have these strong opinions about what's going to happen and what you should invest in? That's where my anger in the past has always come from. Is just feeling frustrated that it's like, what information, I feel like I'm talking to all of the most, the experienced people in the hobby. I feel like have, certainly not the selling experience of a Dan Ketchum Collectibles or TCA Gaming or something like that. Although now I'm starting to get into that more. I really was just watching it from afar and, learning from afar. Now I'm kind of diving head in myself. But from like the collecting, watching the market side, could tell you every pop report by heart. I could tell you, for all of the, vintage and middle era sets, I could tell you all the cards in all of the modern sets. I could tell you, the price changes, the amount that different things were, put on, that level of sort of like obsession and detail. And I just loved it. Right. Of all that data. And I still had, I can't tell you how the demand is going to be. I can give you accurate information on, what the pop report was and my instinct or my general instinct on sort of the how much of this stuff is that are likely going to continue to be graded versus, other things in the hobby. One thing we did this month, we're doing deep analytical dives on, and Dan posted our Patreon. If you want to, no pressure. If you want analysis and other people like us, and it's valuable, it's $10 a month. We do presentations. We have a Discord. We have conversations. The one thing that we're going to do, over the long run, right, is track the degree at which more is being graded or less is being graded of certain cards, right? And so we've really seen a steep decrease in WotC and low pop middle era 10s. A lot of those cards, they're still holding fairly steady 9s. For example, this is a little, and those types of trends and information can be helpful, but it still doesn't tell you that, it still doesn't tell you where that demand piece is going to be in a few years. And it still doesn't tell you who's buying these things at these prices. Are collectors buying it? And is it really disappearing from the market? Or is someone buying a ton of it up, and as soon as it goes up, the price is going to be pushed right back down because they're going to try to sell a bunch of it, or whatever. How smart, how savvy is that seller going to be? And then obviously, the whole, shout out to Z&G Emporium. I saw your video, about shill bidding. I have videos on my channel years ago. I'm sure he does. I'm sure lots of people do. Have made videos for a long time on shill bidding and on the dangers of shill bidding and understanding shill bidding and understanding. I used to call it I used to call it defensive shill bidding was the term that I would use, I differentiated two different types of shill bidding that I think people did. One type of shill bidding was actually purchasing the item, like a friend purchasing the item in order to put a new high comp, and then not paying for it. Obviously, that wouldn't work on like 130 point, but it would work, on showing that eBay comp. And what you do is you fake purchase something to put a new high comp, and then you refer to that comp to sell your card, right? Um, so that sort of shill buying, we could say, maybe it's not so much shill bidding, although you can do that in an auction, right? And then defensive shill bidding, which is sort of like, I own this card and I don't want it to go that low. I guess three different, yeah. I don't want it to go that low, so I'm gonna bid on this, maybe even win it, maybe even buy it to just keep that card price high. I think that describes probably the majority of what was going on during the boom, and what is probably still going on. It's probably a very small minority that's like fake buying stuff and or bidding up their own items to make more money, because that's just so obviously like that just should be like instinctually shady in my mind. Like you're it's fraud. Now, not I don't mean fraud legally necessarily. I don't know the legality of it, but it's fraud in the sense of like you are fraudulently like it appears that this is happening, that people want it, but what's really happening is this, right? Um, uh, you know, I'm not going to get into the legality of it, just because it's against eBay terms of service doesn't mean that it's illegal, or whatever. And people do things on eBay all the time that are against eBay terms of service. So it doesn't, and they don't get kicked off eBay, so I won't comment on that part of it. Um, but this stuff has been going on for years, and the people who talk about it all the time and push it all the time and say, this is the only thing that's happening. This is, the only thing that, is the only reason no one really wants these things. Like, obviously not the case. And obviously not the case that like shill bidding isn't happening. These things aren't impacting the market, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is part of what makes this the Wild West. And the more knowledge, the more experience, the more data, the more price history. It's what I tell people in the Patreon when we look over data. It's not necessarily that like this data is going to be like you're gonna be able to take that and like start a flipping business and be successful the day after. But the more and more experiences you have and the better you get at pattern recognition, the more you're going to be able to be like, that feels weird. That feels different. That feels strange. I wonder what's going on there. Maybe there's something fishy. Maybe I need to be careful not to get, and then you obviously have channels who are calling out people who are, doing this type of thing on sort of a large scale, right? And that helps people because they're like, oh, I shouldn't do business with those people. But the other thing that helps you is like understanding that like tons of people are doing that on like $5 cards, like $10 card. Like most of the activity is happening on like $5, $10, $20, $30, like small scale stuff, right? And just understanding if things start to look weird to you, maybe something weird is happening. Maybe this isn't, and when I say weird, maybe it's not necessarily illegal or even unethical, frankly, but just like not a really sustainable trend or pattern, or doesn't feel collector driven. And so maybe I should wait to buy it because it's going to come back down. That's how I tend to think about the market and those types of things. Anyway, okay. Anyone have any questions, comments, things that people are interested in me discussing? I'd be happy to discuss anything. I do want to do a video where I start bringing people on again to have conversations. So I'm hoping, to do that when I have my full voice and my full energy soon. And I also want to start bringing on some guests that I've never brought on before. Some friends, new friends, people who I have known for a long time and never had on the channel, to just like have conversations so you guys can hear their perspectives. And, I'm not going to make a lot of videos. I'm not going to try to grow this channel huge, but Yeah, the plan is to like continue chugging along and doing it at a level that I enjoy doing it. Um, eh, let's see. Let's see what we got. I could go to more of the beginning, I'm sure. If you have stuff, just put it at the end though. um, let's see. Haven't tuned into one of these since like 2021. Cool to see you're still going. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, I took a long break from doing videos and have done a couple in the last few weeks, but I've still been, collecting and as engaged, as ever behind just not online, as much. I prefer the more in-person stuff anyway, if I could choose. Nice to see a lot of familiar faces here. Walmart breaks when? Yeah, for real, Ben. It's like these are interesting questions, right? What and this is part of why, like, I have friends and people who talk to me who ask me, or just tell me that they may not want my advice. Some people might, some people just tell me what they're doing and I'm, don't really care what I think. um, I had one of those interactions recently. That's why, like, maybe I brought it up. It was just like, why are you telling? Like, okay, good luck. um, anyway, uh, but I just got a message from PSA. Let's see. Okay. Uh, yeah, I mean, it's why like investing. There's going to be so much competition in the space for um if these things are successful and these platforms end up being really successful, it's why like investing in any specific company or being able to predict where it's going to go is very difficult. It's part of why if you are a reseller and streamer, it's why I am so in favor of like you trying to build out multiple platforms, trying to build relationships with multiple distributors, multiple selling platforms, right? And then from the buyers, like as many buyers, obviously, as many consumers as you possibly can. I mean, that's common sense stuff, but it takes hard work, and it's also hard because it's like, well, I'm so successful on eBay, I'm so successful here. Why should I go on Whatnot or TikTok or any of these other places? And it's a personal business decision, but there are real reasons to not put all of your eggs in one basket. Do you collect or see a future in Weiss? The Chase SPs are very rare for set cards, but with Weiss, you really need to pick and choose your battles. Yeah, so I'm not like super engaged in the Weiss market. I don't know exactly where things are at and like where things are moving. I do buy and sell some Weiss and I collect some Weiss. There are a few animes that I just particularly was a fan of. That Weiss started making cards for, and if Weiss makes cards for other animes that I'm a fan of, I probably will buy my only interest personally as a collector is just sort of the gold signed, the Chase SPs. So hold on one sec. Yeah. So, yeah, but I just I don't have any great instinct or knowledge. I want to bring Sub F on again, Nathan. Got to meet him in person for the first time. We've talked a lot online over the years, but it was really nice meeting him in person at Collecticon. He's someone who has a lot of experience with Weiss and probably would be a good person to ask a question like that. I wouldn't want to steer you wrong. Um, I'm still selling it okay. I would if I had to venture a guess, and Weiss fans can correct me pretty strongly on this. I won't be offended. Please do in the chat. For me personally, I was selling graded Weiss and Weiss a little bit better like a year and a half ago, like a little quicker than I am now. But I do so little of it, and I do only a couple of things that it's like it's total. That is like totally take that with the biggest grain of salt in the world. Um, any updated thoughts on the prospects of making a six-figure income in the cardboard business space? Yeah, so that, to be fair to myself, Dan, that live was about making six figures just on like grading ultra modern and just doing those like specific plays that I am not a big fan of. And I think has quite a bit of risk. And to be honest, like to be fair to myself too, like those plays have gotten worse and there are less of them now. And um, like obviously you can still make a lot of money doing that. There's still people doing that. It's just tough, man. It's tough, like selling like $30 to $50 stuff on eBay with the shipping fees, and moving enough of it and then having enough cards where you can grade a high enough amount. The math didn't make sense in my head. Even though maybe I didn't articulate it well enough in that video. Now, making six figures, buying collections, and grading and doing sealed, and selling to all different types of people. If you have the capital and the experience, it's at least for right now is a thing. So, is the market too flooded with baby shinies right now? Never enough baby shinies, John Doe. Never enough. Baby shinies forever. Maybe that should be if I ever have merch. Maybe that should be. I want to get just like a few pieces of merch so I can trade my merch with other people who have merch. So you can only get merch from me if you have merch, and when we can trade merch. So I want some I want merch from everyone. And I'll just wear all Pokemon merch to every show of other people. Yeah, baby shinies forever. Will there be pizza? Good question, Ben. Only if you order it. I actually ordered some to your house. All right. Serious response to the baby shinies. Baby shinies are good for collecting, but I personally wouldn't buy them for future value, and definitely wait to buy them a few months after release, especially if you're buying English due to inevitable reprints. Yeah, I think this point is definitely true. I think in the short term, it's not something I would focus on. I would focus on stuff where you feel like they're really kind of disappearing from the market. If you're looking for like short-term upward movement, the best thing to look for short upward movement is really to look at TCG Player and eBay and check sold and see like how many of this item are being sold versus how many of these items are left in the inventory. And then and then also look to see if the price is trending up, trending down, trending sideways, etc. Generally, and then a little bit of calculus is understanding like the rate at which it's trending up. Is that increasing? Is the rate increasing or is the rate decreasing? Yeah, if you really want to try to big brain this stuff, I mean, believe it or not, like their algorithms, like this is the world of like buyouts and low end grinding on TCG Player. There are people who do this. This is a huge thing in the Magic world. So it's a thing. A card like that, probably I would mention most baby shinies. Even, I've seen baby shinies certainly go up in value quite a bit. There were cards that, when I made those points were like 70 cents that are now like $3-4. And then there are other ones that were 70-80 cents that are still 70-80 cents. So anyway, for those who don't know, I was asked a question like, what low end cards basically do you like and do you think are cool and do you think are like undervalued for their value? And I was like, well, you can buy like really cool baby shinies from like expensive Hidden Fates, and particularly I pushed the Shiny GX because I was like, well, the Shiny GX boxes are like a few $100s each, at this point, or like they were like 200, 250 at the time. And it was like, you get one per box or two per box, actually, I think. You need two baby shinies, one full art. There are quite a few different ones, and I like them. What can I tell you? I might forever be in the minority. I've always been a fan. I do think the newest baby shinies are the best looking in the Paldean Fates, or I always particularly like the Japanese more of this stuff. I really like the EX Treasure baby shinies. Of course, the EX Treasure booster boxes, at least for right now, are so cheap. They're like you can get them like direct, for like $40 now. I don't know, $38. I mean, maybe they're starting to trickle back up, but it's not the time, I would say, generally speaking. But do I think they're great value for collecting? If I were to answer this seriously, yes. I think they're really cool. I like them. But you should collect what you like. Don't collect what some random old man, you know, on YouTube likes. Um, Vintage 21 says, Hunter says, Charizard King defended it on a story, pretty much saying it's normal. It's okay. Very strange community. Supposedly super reputable mailman, big players in the hobby are sketchy. Yeah, I mean, I get, there's like actual legality. I think this is talking about, I assume this is, yeah, talking about like Z and G's video. There's actual legality, and then there's business practices, and different businessmen are going to have different business practices. And the, yeah, like, what are my practices? My practices are, when I first started the hobby, I did some early on, very early on, I did like some defensive shill bidding. I remember doing it. But like we're talking about like my first couple weeks in the hobby, because I bought something and I bought maybe like a $20 card or something, or $5 card in eBay. And I didn't want to like feel stupid. I don't want to lose money. So I remember like buying some of the other ones just to like get a floor on the price. Now I paid for all of the items, so it wasn't against like that. That to me is like the least sleazy version of show bidding, but it still creates like I don't know if artificial pricing is the right amount. All the other types of show bidding, I like would net like the like bidding on your own items to try to bid up the price so that other person will buy it. Like that type of stuff is definitely a different level of sketchiness in my mind than the other kind. But like none of it's great. And like my advice to people who are like defensive show bidding is you're probably going to end up losing more money, because you're kind of throwing, it's a little bit of a sunk cost fallacy. It's like you may have just overpaid for the first item, and now you're overpaying for like lots of items to try to feel better about it. I think oftentimes when people do that type of shill bidding, it actually costs them more money than they make, probably. So I don't know. Those would be like my thoughts on it. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. I try to just not get caught in these things. Someone like Z&G, some people who run an auction platform, this is like a major thing they need to think about. They need to know where they stand. Part of the reason why he's going to put a lot of long video about it and talk about it for a long time is it is important to understand what his policies are going to be for his business. And when you sell your stuff with him, or even more importantly, in this case, when you buy something from him that you trust that he's not colluding, because he could collude, right? Like, let's say beyond even just like he has people behind like doing it where he doesn't know about it, or he just allows it and puts his hands up in the air. There are plenty of consigners who just put their hands up in the air and say, whatever, I'm sure. But even worse than that, like he could be in on the scams. Like, now James is someone who, is like, that's part of the reason why it's important for him to come out with a stance. Like, you know, James is not my real life childhood friend or family member, so I can't vouch for him in that sense. But I can vouch for him as a fellow Pokemon person, as someone I've done a lot of business with, had a lot of positive experiences, and within the space is one of the most reputable, if not tied for the most reputable, among the people who I think are reputable. We're all sort of similarly tied, I would hope. Um, so I would not worry about, in fact, I think that's one of the strengths of buying from James, in general, is that he's not like, something bad isn't going to happen probably. And if it does, he'll very likely work very hard to make it right. If something gets broken, something gets lost in the mail, something like this happens, like he'll work hard to make it right. John Doe says, I'm focusing on just the best sets currently, waiting for 151 to get cheaper with reprints, but loving how cheap Crown Zenith is. Yeah, Crown. I love those gold cards from Crown Zenith. They're sweet. It's definitely cool to be able to get those in like PSA 10 for. I'm not sure what the Giratina is going for. I want to say the last ones I was selling maybe like, I think the Japanese I sold like 120 maybe, and the English maybe like one little higher, 140 140, 130. I forget. But the other ones, maybe the Arceus is like slightly above 100 too, but the Palkia and the Dialga you can get like in PSA 10 if you like graded cards for like under $100, and if you like them raw, you can get it like what 80, 60, and then 40 and 40, or not 40, 40, like less, like 32, 32 ish, off the top of my head. I don't know. The prices are always changing a little bit, but so definitely, I think very reasonable prices given the price of the, give price given the coolness in my view of just the card for collecting only. Um, yeah, 151 is still like super popular. It's just it just continues to be the best selling thing, John Doe. Like, for me, for just like every seller I talk to, there's just still people, and it surprised me a little bit, not because I mean, I think the set's awesome and I think the arts are great. It surprises me a little bit, um, because I thought just the amount of it, and I didn't think it was so cool. But I underestimated how many. I think this is my theory. Yeah, I have no idea if this is true. I think I probably underestimated the amount of new people just continuing to come into the hobby from my generation who that those are their favorite Pokemon, and they're not going to be at all interested in the other sets really, except that set. And then that set is going to be sort of a gateway into lots of other sets, similar to how Evolutions was, Hidden Fates was to some extent, et cetera, et cetera. That's where the demand side, it's like you can be super engaged, you can check things every day, you can know all the numbers and the trends, but it's still is very, very hard to predict. Easiest thing to do is just buy low, sell high. Hey Kai, I hope you're doing well. How many cons you hitting this year, Jake? Will we see you in Orlando? I'm gonna be at Card Party, which is in Orlando. I think I'm gonna go to Collecticon too. My memory is they're very close to each other. I may not be able to swing both. I'm definitely gonna go to Card Party just because I haven't been, and I just heard it was like a super fun, and it's like a different, even just like a different group of people, and I don't know. I think it'd just be cool to experience that. As far as Collecticons, so my business partner and I together are going to be going to 10 out of 12 of them, but he's going to be going to a number of them. I'm not. I'm probably going to end up going to 6 to 8 of them. So still a lot of them. And he'll probably be at the other ones. Like this LA one, he'll be there representing, but I will not be. But I'm going to Houston. That'll be the next one I'm going to, and I'm probably going to miss out on Chicago, unfortunately, which is the one that sounds like most people who I know are going to. And some of my favorite personalities, friends, in the hobby live around Chicago. So I'm definitely sad to be missing that, but it's a Jewish holiday, so gotta respect that and make the girlfriend partner slash girlfriend happy. Paldean Master Set. What do you think it's worth now, and what do you think it will do later down the road? So I don't know. I honestly I haven't even been able to deal that much in Paldean Fates yet because I'm a big collection buyer, and there just aren't that many. There are way more people like opening it. It's still pretty early in the life cycle before you start to see lots of people selling their collections of it. Like 151, I buy all the time in collections now. It's been out enough. Definitely Crown Zenith. Even like Shiny Treasure EX. I still haven't been able to get too much of it, and then every time I get some, it sells pretty quick. So I haven't been able to build up a lot. The reason I mention that is because that's how I know all the prices, because I'm literally spending all day pricing things and buying things. So I'm very like I can tell you the prices of things that are in my inventory and things that I tend to deal with a lot. Not those yet. My guess, my general sense of the pricing is something like this: is that the most of the baby shinies are probably between $1 and $3, I would guess. Would be my guess. You guys tell me how right I am, just knowing how the market in general. So $1 to $3, and then you probably have like the Pikachu, the Mimikyu. The Pikachu is probably the most expensive. Mimikyu is probably the second most expensive, and then you probably have like a handful of others. I think the full art shinies are probably surprisingly low in my opinion. I think the gold cards are probably around 12 to 15 each. I think the um I think probably the which ones are gonna be the most expensive? Maybe the Mew? Interesting, I saw the Charizard was super low. Just not the chaser Charizard, but the less chase Charizard. I forget the terminology, of those, um, of the different rarities there, but, um I think the cheaper charger, it's like $5 or something, or like $10 maybe. Muse maybe like 10 to 20, 10 to 15, probably closer to 10 now as more and more come out. So I think it's probably not that expensive, the master set. You have your Iona and you have the Charizard, which are the most expensive, and then the Mew and the Gardevoir being the next two most expensive. So let's see. Let's see if people are putting. If I scroll to the bottom, are people putting prices in? See what your guys' knowledge is like. No prices, no guesses. All right. So you'd have to add those up and get. I'm gonna say a master set right now would cost you. Let's say in auction, if it one auctioned off on eBay, I'm guessing a master set right now. Although people are willing to pay more sometimes for master sets early on. Let's say $650. All right. And what do I think it'll do later down the road? Uh, I don't know. The supply side is I don't have a sense. I don't know how much they're going to print. I don't know if they're going to reprint. Um, I like it. I like that set. I like all the shiny sets. I think the shiny sets are good. I think that this set is better than Shining Fates because it has a few more cards that are a little bit more exciting, like the Mew and the Charizard and the Gardevoir. And that just adds a little bit of differentiation to it. Be interesting to see, like, if Pokemon succeeds, is very popular in the long run. These sets will have a lot of the first shiny cards ever of certain Pokemon that may become popular in the future. It's something that for your long term goals, your long term I like it, but uh, just because I like it doesn't mean other people will like it in the future. So anyway, that's my feelings on it. If you're interested, let's see. Oh, sorry, there were some more questions I skipped. Let me make sure I get those. Purple Rem says, I'm considering selling off large parts of my collection to fund some life goals, but I'm not in a rush to sell. Any advice for maximizing the value of my cards? So, okay. So it really depends on what you have, which is often the first answer to anything. Generally speaking, if you have slabs over $250, eBay Vault 100% is the way to go. eBay Vault, even if you want to auction it there, eBay Vault. If you don't want to do the eBay Vault yourself, send it to a consigner. I'm actually going to start doing consignments. Dan is someone who obviously I trust and is great. He's doing eBay consignments. His is already up and running. I would suggest, he has a long track record. Hopefully you guys all, trust me equally. But I'm going to be doing some consign because my partner is going to have extra time. And so we're going to start a consignment business. He's extremely reliable. I trust him a lot, willing to sort of put my reputation and name on it. But 100%. Now doing it yourself will save you whatever we end up charging, whatever Dan's charging now. I'm not sure what Dan's charging. Probably 1% to 3%, depending on the value of the card, would be my guess. Doing it yourself, you'll get that extra 1% to 3%. What's so great about the vault is that there's no fees right now. Now they will add fees eventually. And and the fees will be in the form of two fees. There'll be a buyer's premium, which means that buyers who buy, you won't have to pay a fee, but the buyer will have to pay a fee. And any of this can change. I would say any of this is subject to change. This is just what I've heard from other people, and I think what eBay has said so far. Correct me if there's new news that is different than this, but and so eBay will lost my train of thought. Yeah, so there will be two fees eventually. There'll be that 3% buyer's premium, which won't be a fee on you, but theoretically people will want to pay a little less for your card because they're going to then have to pay 3% extra on the other side of the deal. And then the other thing is they're going to charge like storage fees for having your card there. They'll, annually, monthly. I don't know if it'll be like a flat fee per card or if it'll be a fee versus based on the value of the card. I don't know if there is any information yet about that out there, but that is likely those will be the two things. Still super minimal though. I mean, and if you're looking to sell stuff like fairly quickly, you probably would be able to sell it all, potentially, or a lot of it, maybe before some of those fees come into place, so the sooner the better with the high end stuff. I would say your sub $20 stuff, TCG, Player Direct, I think eBay is also great for sub $20 stuff because you get the 67 cent, whatever shipping. Obviously this can also depend where you live heavily. I'm talking about for people in the US. What else? $20 to $50 stuff I find is sort of the hardest to move. But it depends what it is. Like if you have really good stuff and it's like stuff that sells really well, I'm always buying. You can sell that to me. I tend not to pay quite as well as streamers do. I find I usually pay a little bit, like 5% under what they do. So, but I can buy a lot more than a lot of them can. Not all of them. Generally, the ones who buy a lot more, though, pay a lot less. So this is just my experience, right? And there's going to be people out there who are to do different things. Okay, so this is my experience, but generally speaking, like the really good stuff, you probably get around 75% for it. I would also pay 75% for it if it was stuff I really needed and was like really, really good stuff, or if you had a lot of it. And that would probably go up to $20 to $100 cards. The reason why I picked 20 to 50 is because the shipping fees, or if you want to sell it with someone else, like you want to sell it with me or you want to sell it with Dan or Z&G or whatever, the consignment fees are really high because our shipping fees eat up a large percentage because it's like a $4. So your margins just become worse and worse. I don't think it's worth for people. I think people should just sell all that stuff to resellers. It's just like not worth your time. Your time could be better spent. I sell all of that stuff. I sell most of that stuff vending in person, slowly over eBay, although it's my least favorite place to sell it. Or I'm often just selling to the same resellers I'm telling you to sell all that stuff to. But it really depends on your operation. Obviously, if you're a collector and you've never sold before, right? I would go those routes, and I probably would do, depending on the amount of it and depending if you don't really have interest in selling, I would just consign all of it. So I would probably try to work some deal maybe for the low end consigning. It might be a little bit hard because even though you're keeping a high percentage, if for example, if I'm taking 10%, on $20, I'm making $2 a card, which that would be good, but 10% is a lot. That might be fine and worth my business's time. Maybe it wouldn't be. I'd have to talk to my business partner about how he wants to handle that type of thing. Anyway, easiest stuff is the eBay vault. Then if you're selling yourself, that's what I would do with the $1 to $20 stuff. The stuff that's below $1, I would sell to someone like Zach, Gem, and Pokemon, who is buying up a bunch of bulk and decent cards like that, and has a business model that uses that. And then for the Yeah, for the, maybe even the $100 to $100 if you don't really have an eBay in store and don't wanna do it yourself, just try and sell it all to one person, or a couple of people. If you wanna sell to me, feel free to reach out on Discord. The process that I do is I price everything out. I'm like totally transparent. I tell you exactly why I'm paying what I'm paying. I tell you exactly how much money I spend, particularly if it's like, someone I really know. And I even tell you like, do I think this person might pay a little bit more, whatever. The advantage of selling to someone like me is like getting the cash very quickly, the reliability, and the fact that I pay quite strong. Like I pay quite a bit stronger than, some people pay more, look for 60% or 55%. If it's really good stuff that will move for me really well, I'm more in that 70 to 75% range. And then you have people who will pay 80% for like your most popular alt arts, your most popular newest set moving cards, and usually they'll only pay that if they have a shortage or something like that, or they're a streamer and they can move the product really fast. Now, I'm sure you can find people out there who are paying a lot lower, who are paying 85, 90 maybe. I don't know any of them. If you find one, send them to my way because I'll sell everything I own to them, at those prices. So, anyway, that's generally how all that works. Hopefully that's helpful, Purple Run. You know, um, have I gone for TikTok deals? I have not gone for too many TikTok deals, but I hear they're amazing. Been too busy doing other things. I've missed out, man. I missed out on those sealed product deals. What do I think about Star Wars Unlimited? I don't even know what that is. Is that a new set? Star Wars Unlimited. Might be a new set. I'm a little out of the Star Wars world. I've just been too busy to collect Star Wars. I finished some of my like Star Wars collecting goals, and I've like haven't been as engaged in the hobby like the last like 6 months to a year. So I'm not familiar with that. Aiden M says we're going to be 4 years. I'm probably going to go for another 45 minutes, guys. Just to let you know, probably try to end around 10 p.m. Eastern here. We're going to be, yeah. So if you have more questions, feel free to put them at the bottom of the chat. I'll try to go through things and hopefully get to yours. Aiden, we're going to be 4 years removed from the beginning of the 2020 boom in a few months. How relevant is that time period towards today's market? Are we fully removed from that boom? Gosh, I'm not sure exactly what I want to say. Let me think about it for a sec how I think about that time. So I think that I certainly wouldn't say like, I mean, I think psychologically, like that period is probably still looming quite large in our minds, in the collective, in people who were here, and in the price history that people are looking up. So, it certainly is the price, the very high prices, the very low prices before, the very high prices after, and like the somewhere in the middle prices now. All of that certainly, it's an obvious answer, but has impacted, I think is still very much impacting people, I'm sure, I would think, sort of on a common sense level. As far as like on that emotional, psychological level, I think that the hobby is a mix of brand new people who aren't familiar with any of that and who have come in, in maybe the last year and a half, where prices have been fairly stable for the most part, outside of like a little bit of like a Japanese bubble bursting boom on some certain, on certain cards because of like Chinese buyers and then also the Japanese market and some price manipulation stuff in Japan. Yeah, whatever. Combination of a lot of things and a lot of genuine interest too, for sure. So outside of that, I think most of those people they hear about it if they're engaging in content, and if they're taking the hobby pretty seriously and looking up price history, they're seeing it, but they didn't go through it. So there's that group, and there's the people who came in sort of at the height, who were buying in at the height, who things fell, so they have their experience of like, I don't know. I think that group of people is probably the most negative, anxious group of people and are probably a decent barometer for like more of the bearish side on average. I think now you have to suss out people's personalities because I know people in that group who somehow saw that and are still like Pokemon's only ever gone up type vibes, you know. But generally speaking, those are probably going psychologically going to be the people who are most negative, and then the people who have been here the longest, not myself, people who've been here 15 years, they obviously have the most experience. People who've been here like, 8 years, whatever, my amount of time. I think, have seen a little bit more to the point where probably a lot of us are more in that sort of like what I would say is a healthy humility of like, wow, these things are hard to predict. These things are, it was kind of crazy there for a while, and we didn't know how high it was going to go, and then we didn't know how far it was going to fall, and things are reminding us maybe a little of like 2018, 2019 time for right this second, but certainly with a lot more like interest and a lot more people and a lot more businesses, and probably a lot of us are fairly hopeful, but also, you know, cautious about any too strong predictions. I think people were, often I think people view those people as bears, but really in my view, it's more of a middle ground sort of cautiousness. The people who think we're bears weren't around like it's um haven't been around in really negative times. um so yeah. So that's my general thinking of how that period, different sort of groups within Pokemon are going to have slightly different psychological relationships at that period. As far as like where we're at in some sort of like boom bust cycle, I would say that we are hopefully. I don't really know. Yeah, I have no freaking idea really, but but if you were gun to my head, I would put us in a hopefully we are still there's a much larger bubble to come at some point. Um and particularly for anything that ends up being like important to the hobby in the long run and historical, and anything that is relatively rare. Now, modern sets today could be relatively rare, particularly like the hardest to pull cards could be relatively quite rare compared to sets 30 years from now. Okay? So it's relatively those cards are not rare to trophy cards or something like that. But when we think about how things could progress, I've talked a lot about comics and the different ages of comics. It's like, well, are we still early on in the progression of this hobby and our print run's still very low right now? Or is this going to end up being one of the high times of print runs in Pokemon in the long run? You know, or are the print runs going to get less in the future and they're going to add more rarity and even harder to pull cards? And so are these cards going to be more like I don't think they're ever going to be on the level of junk wax like in the 80s, where you have to understand junk wax in the 80s, like they printed, not only did they print like way too much of it, but there were complete sets with no inserts. So we're talking, particularly, so we're talking sets that like you get every card extremely easily, and yet they printed a ton of it. Unlike today, where the commons may never have any value, but the one in every 1,500 boxes to pull card, is probably way rarer than anything, than any card from that 1980s, to 1990s junk wax era, for example. So we'll see. The demand side of that is always a big question, but that's my general thinking on things right now. I think Dan and I had a conversation a while back on this channel about where are we? Are we in sort of a cardboard super bubble? And where are we in that? Or, has a lot of that bubble popped now, or sort of that the FOMO of the moment? And is this going to be a bigger and broader thing that builds out and does well over time? And I think I was at like a 7 out of 10, slightly towards the side. But I think I called it as hopeful, because and part of it is I'm biased and I want it. I care about this stuff. It's not just about money. The money to feed my family and to buy cards that I really like and to build a collection is great. But like, it would suck to like not be able to do this anymore in my life. Like, I would find other hobbies and other friends and other things, but it's a big part of my life and I enjoy it, right? So I'm very biased. Um, but even back then I put myself at probably about a 7 on the sort of like in the long run, still very hopeful and optimistic. And I think that again, the rarer, most historic items will be the best items and will do the best in the long run, unless you are buying them when they are like in the moment, having their biggest moment, right? So if you bought vintage WotC right as Logan Paul was opening base set, right, and everyone thought it was way rarer than it was, and everyone had misconceptions of those cards, like that was bad time, right? um, that was the worst possible time to buy those cards ever. Like at that point in the hobby, there might be worse times to buy in the future. Hopefully there will be. Hopefully there'll be a much bigger bubble. People think I'm like anti-bubble, and it's more it's more understanding that like healthy markets always are going to bubble. And if it sustains itself, it's going to have another FOMO bubble where things get kind of crazy, you know. And the hope is that that's bigger than this previous one, not so that we all make money, but because it's an inevitable fact of markets that sustain themselves and continue to grow and are popular. Hopefully that makes sense to people. It's not we're hoping for that. It's just that it's inevitable. And so you as an individual engaging in this market or any market has to think, do I believe in this market long term? And if you do, where are we in these like bubble phases of things? Um, so to that point, like I'm probably like maybe like a 7.5 now. I'm like a little bit. I think that the last year has been good, and I'm a little bit even more enthused than I was. So I still think that that's a lot of risk. And again, I think that there are better things in the world of investments to invest your money in, and there are better bets. But it's not like I certainly don't think you can't make money or won't make money investing in Pokemon. I have never believed that. I have never said that you won't make money or can't make money. The question is, is it mathematically the risk reward worth you putting it in this versus real estate or the stock market or etc. So now, have there been times when when I'm like I would not buy anything and investing is really stupid? Yeah, for like a year and a half. And, I was probably mostly right. Were there some things in those times that you could have bought and went up in price? Probably. But, overall, the market was super bubbly. Now, could I have been wrong? Could the market have doubled again? Like if you had watched my first videos, probably there are probably some videos that if you had listened to those right at that time, and only listened to those and didn't buy for like a few months or something, like you probably would have lost a ton of money, right? Because there's probably a few months where the market doubled again or tripled again, whatever, before going down 90%, right? So the worst possible thing would have been you sort of and frankly, a lot of people did that, which is why the prices went the way they did. People's instincts are often like they don't hold to convictions. So the way to invest is not to try to time the peak of that sort of bubble. It's to be like, are we heading into a bubble? Does this feel like we're going into a bubble? And the way I would define that is, do people seem irrationally exuberant, too optimistic about the future, putting in money that they shouldn't be, taking big risks on debt, on money that they don't have? Are people talking about the collecting, the enjoying of the market, or is everything invest, 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 invest? Like right now, there's a lot of like anti-investing content and anti-investing sentiment, I think, and more like true collector spirit and all these types of things. Like those are signs of like of a non-bubble, of a time when, if anything, maybe there's too much pessimism, maybe, and I think certainly some of those people are probably too pessimistic from a financial perspective on what these items could be, right? But I still think you have a loud chorus again, and of people, and you still have lots of new people coming in, and you have lots of people breaking and doing all sorts of things who are still very much in this space with a money mindset, kind of driving prices, and where we're at in that overall thing. I don't know, but if I had to guess, um, my hope my hope would be that we continue to stabilize, continue to creep up. My guess would be one of two things. There's either going to be some new, very popular chase cards, like new thing that just people get really into and really like, and part of Scarlet and Violet. Or if there isn't, there's going to, like, if you look at the vintage market right now, prices are going up on most graded things, on most raw things, particularly low pop stuff. And I would expect probably that trend to continue to shore up. And if some of those cards like really disappear, you could see big sales, collectors buying cards they haven't seen in a while. But again, that is the rarer stuff. Um, there's very common vintage items. There's very common middle era items that I wouldn't guess would have that trend. But like those are big guesses, and I don't have a degree. I don't have a certainly don't have a degree of certainty enough in any of that I view them as like good investments. Now, do I think it's a good time to collect those things? And possibly you'll also be able to like make money if you ever decide to sell, or at least you won't theoretically lose a lot of money as they collapse. I've been saying that for like a year and a half now for people who are, on the Patreon or whatever. And I've been telling people, I've been nibbling on these types of things. I'm willing to take the risk that they would have fallen another 20, 30%. I like these things enough at these price points that if that happened, I would have been just happy to collect them and have them. My primary goal is not to have a pile of money. My primary goal is to support myself and my family. My second goal is to have the collection that I want. My third goal would be to have a pile of money. So at the end of the day, my goal and my plan has always been that the more money I can make from this hobby, the more cards I'm going to buy, and the more I'm going to work towards my goal of having like the great, the most comprehensive non-sports card collection, and doing the museum one day, and all the things I've talked about for years. Like it's still passionate about it, still enjoy it. It's a long game. It's patience, and sure it'll take some twists and turns, but hopefully it'll stay interesting to me and interesting to people here. And, they're collecting and going to conventions and going to shows and meeting new people and people making content, whatever. Any thoughts on what the 30th anniversary went to the market 2 years away? Man, I don't know. I don't think I probably have anything too intelligent to say about it. Yeah, sorry. I mean, maybe they'll create some like really cool set, which would be cool. Maybe do some throwbacks celebrating a different era of Pokemon. They're probably going to throw a lot of money into it. Maybe they'll release some other really cool thing, like a virtual reality video game that's like awesome, or something new in a different space in Pokemon that brings that keeps Pokemon strong, brings a lot of Pokemon, and works for a funnel for the cards and for other collectibles in the hobby. But we'll have to see. Robert Ness says, do you see Pokemon's new Pocket app taking off to a point where people start selling virtual cards for high dollar amounts? Or do you think Pokemon will be very strict on the sale of virtual cards. Don't know. I really don't know a lot about this yet. I actually just heard about it for the first time a few days ago. I feel like I'm kind of like out of the loop, and unfortunately, I just don't have any insider info. I know some people I could ask, like what they think about this, and I have like I got asked about this last week in office hours and Patreon, and it's something on my list to I should write it down to ask about because it could be a big deal. Um, if I had to guess, I would say like Pokemon's going to be very strict, and I think the Pokemon company primary focus really is not secondary market, like not booming, not secondary market. They want they really care about the customers, and they want people who play their game and collect to build friendships and relationships, and they want it to be like a wholesome family thing. And they're not looking for short-term quick gambling. Like I think that is not their mission statement, not what drives them. And frankly, it's also what's made them very financially successful as a company. So, they have such a great reputation in part because they haven't gone down that route, right? They haven't done like serialized, they haven't upped the gambling anymore beyond where like the insert level is. Now, the inserts is they've added things to make it more fun to collect and gamble, right? They have certainly are engaged in that meta game, but not to the extent that some other companies, have. So I would expect them to really err on the side of caution on that. And then if you add in like like I don't know the legality of like kids being involved in that type of thing, and yeah, it's just something I don't know much about. Robert, maybe someone in the chat, has some interesting to say. Those are just random thoughts off the top of my head. Grading singles at Beckett is my play. Good chances for black labels. Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I think like my question would be like, how deep is the market for black labels? Can you make? And I'm not saying you can't, Kamehameha. Like, can you make 100 grand doing that? Like, or is it more like, yeah, I made like 500. I can make $500 every month doing it as a little like fun side hustle, and like that's sweet and that's sick. But I think there's a lot of plays like that are not super deep. But I could be very wrong, about something like that. And I'm a lot less about, just for me personally, I'm a lot less about the plays, and I'm more about like creating a business engine and a formula that always works and that can be adaptable to different environments and adaptable to whatever is for sale. I don't want to rely on like a specific card or a specific set or a specific era. I buy everything from every era at the right price, and I know how to move and I know what I need to buy everything at the right price in order to move it quick enough that it makes sense for me to buy it. So everything has its own margin and everything has its own liquidity. And business is all about increasing your liquidity and increasing your margin, right? But you could have a really small margin, but an amazing liquidity, and you could make a lot more money than someone who has amazing margin, but real slow liquidity. So, again, not a specific comment on that, but just when you start thinking about this stuff and thinking about the different options, you want something that's repeatable, you want something that's reliable, and you want something that over time you can both hopefully increase the margin and the liquidity. And that could be part, at least, of a very thriving business or a strategy, is using Beckett to some extent. Dan does a lot more of that stuff, I think. Dan, I don't know what you're doing exactly these days, but than I do. Lots of different ways. Again, this is like, it's like chess. There's millions of combinations, of things to possibly buy and ways to do this. You're always learning, you're always trying new things. And I view I view this like very, very much the beginning of my selling journey. I feel like I've been a seller for 4 months. Like, maybe it's been 6 months now. I don't even know. Time flies. But, I really only consider like myself really looking into this, really being serious during that period. Before I was a hobbyist who certainly was knowledgeable on the market because I was like obsessive with the data and looking at the market, but I wasn't. It's part of why I asked Dan to be my partner on the Patreon. I really wanted someone who was a seller who who really knew that area. Um, and Yeah, so I'm very much a beginner in that, and it's exciting. It's exciting to be a beginner. It's like a whole new thing to learn. There's tons of different potential and avenues, and the truth is that even as a beginner, it's quite lucrative, which shows that we still might be at the beginning of this type of thing. It's definitely not an oversaturated area. Um, anyway, how do I see the collector Asia? So I am by no means like this is all secondhand. This is stuff I've read. This is stuff that people have told me. I have never even visited Japan, and I have store owner friends who live in Japan who tell me things, right? But so I just want to say this is not primary source info of a person who is Asian or deeply involved in Asian culture. But what I understand is that collecting, buying, buying in general is very massive, and it's become a lot more massive. It's become a lot like the word they have said is like westernized in a lot of ways over time, and that there's tons of collecting going on, buying of all sorts of things going on constantly. A lot of materialism. Um, there's also a lot of the way they, if we're talking specifically about collectibles, they look at collectibles a little bit differently. They view grading a little bit differently, and they want they're generally more they care more about condition and perfection, and they care more about things being immaculate and sort of high end. Um, on the collector side of things. That is what I have been told and what I've heard, but that could just be one group of people. That could just be those whales. Um, you know, I know that like there's like online shopping going on, in China, for example, like 24/7. They're like massive influencers who make like millions of dollars a year, like selling $1 items all day, just like junk, just like mass selling junk. So I'm sure there's also like tons of different Asian countries that probably that I would assume have maybe some similarities, but also lots of differences in their sort of collecting habits. One thing that's been said a lot about Japan specifically is the sort of insular nation. What word am I looking for? There a bit of a bit of a resistance towards like maybe outsiders and outsiders being involved in the market and involved in the company, and maybe taking pride in sort of Japanese culture and Japanese things and Japanese people. I've heard that it can be a little bit hard for businesses to get for Western businesses or people who don't speak Japanese, people who don't really understand Japanese culture, or who maybe don't have the personalities that are particular that maybe are generally considered respectful, or what would the word be? Maybe professional. And so working with those areas can be hard for Westerners. Um, I I definitely want to go to Japan in the next 5 years. It's a plan of mine. It's just very far, and I really want to do it when I can like take the time off. And I want to, I definitely want to like look at Pokemon there, but I'm very interested in going to all the forests and seeing the temples, and I've heard it's it's a great place to visit, very clean, very like everything's very like efficient, very beautiful in terms of the way like the cities are constructed. Um very thoughtful. Like things are built and designed in a very thoughtful way. Um, so yeah, should be interesting. Would love to go. I've only ever heard great things from anyone who's ever gone. Um, I mean, if you were paying, that isn't shill bidding based on the shill bidding conversation. I still think it's a yeah, whatever. Do I think vintage Pokemon or DBZ has more upside? Are you talking about Dragon Ball Z Score, I assume, versus like a DBS or the modern stuff? Definitely Pokemon has way more upside. Um, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to do better. And it doesn't, but as far as like I don't see the DBZ cards ever being millions of dollars where I could see lots and lots and lots of Pokemon cards theoretically be worth millions of dollars. It's not so much because DBZ, I mean, Pokemon is way more popular than DBZ just as a franchise, and it's going to be in my opinion, a more. I love DBZ, so if you're a big DBZ fan, but DBZ is just not going to be nearly as culturally, very likely, unless there's a bit, a continued big resurgence. I don't think it's as culturally as important to the world, and as pervasive in culture that the IP of Pokemon. I mean, Pokemon stands alone. I think DBZ is very popular, great characters. There's lots of things to like about DBZ, and DBZ scores a dead game. It's a dead game, and I do think that hurts its long-term potential upside. Now, does that mean that I thought DBZ was more undervalued. DBZ score was more undervalued, particularly during the Pokemon boom at that moment in history. But that didn't necessarily mean that I thought the upside of DBZ score was better. I hope you guys can understand those different concepts. Like something like Pokemon also has the potential to probably get way more overvalued and overhyped and FOMO'd into than a dead game, than a game that just has like less people, probably also. So there's also like the danger to lose a lot more money or to like, etc. Ooh, that's weird. My battery. Let's see. There we go. Computer wasn't charging. Let's see here. Am I coming to New Jersey? Yes. I am planning on coming to New Jersey. Super psyched about it. Gonna be driving, bringing a bunch of stuff. Very excited that we have one in the Northeast. So hopefully we get even more. How do you like the classic collection cards? I'm loving the Japanese version cards. They look great. Reminds me of Legendary Collection, which totally miss out on. Really like them. I think they're really cool. I'm not sure. Like I haven't. I'm not sure I loved the release of them and the way that we get the cards as far as like the fun of it, but the design I really like. I just think they're really, really cool. Generally speaking, I felt the same way about like the Japanese celebrations being much better looking than the English celebrations. I never liked the logo. I really don't like the celebrations logo for some reason, but otherwise, I really like the design on the Japanese quite a bit from that as well. Good to see you. I hope you're well too. Hope you're doing good. More competition for Dan. Nice. Better lower those fees again, Dan. um, what are your thoughts on Evolving Skies? Every time we think it's too late to get in, it seems to stay. Yeah, so it was interesting. Like there was a moment there where Evolving Skies was like starting to look a bit weak. I actually had lots and lots of people try to sell me cases. Like we're talking, I think I had people reach out to me probably 500 to 1,000 boxes of Evolving Skies, um, at about 360 a box. They were trying to offload it. That's when like probably on TCG Player was about like 410 maybe were like the last sales. I don't know what it's at now. I think it's back over 500, right? Where's it at now? Let me take a look quick. Yeah, I mean, I think with a set, like my concern with a set like that is we don't know how many people are sitting on it. You know, it's I think at $500, if you look at it, what does that make it per pack? Let me do the math quickly. What that's like 410, I want to say. I'll just do it exact. 500 divided by 14-ish. Yeah, 13.888 to be exact. About 14. $14 a pack on average. Obviously, you can buy loose packs for less. Like that is not a crazy price for people to like be ripping them open all the time, right? So when you think of like one person ripping that whole box, that feels pretty expensive to me. Obviously, people are ripping $2,000 boxes and $10,000 boxes in sports. So, I am not the market for ripping and gambling on expensive sealed cardboard. It's just like all the time. But there's a massive market for it. Again, I started the video talking about how like I've been talking to these people, these execs at these different companies, and the numbers are just massive for the amount of people who continue to use these sources, and they've been growing, and people doing like rip and chips and people buying expensive packs and new people coming in doing it. And if that keeps ripping through the product enough, and there aren't that many sealed investors out there, people holding massive, massive, massive positions, over time, could it continue to drift up? Will it continue to drift up? Could it explode up? Maybe no good set comes out in Scarlet and Violet, right? Like no set that rivals Evolving Skies, for example. And people continue to really want that Moonbryon, which continues to do well. I just sold 3 Moonbryons this week. Like, over the last few months, I've sold 3 Moonbryons. And every time I get one in, I like, they're easy to grade. I've graded all 10 so far. I've been fortunate on them. There are a couple that I just sold raw because I didn't think they'd get a 10. And the 10 sell great. The raw ones sell great. I think it's still the best selling card for me, the most popular card, maybe like that and the 151 Charizard and the maybe like Gengar alt art is like a really good one that always like people always are love when they see and get excited, but like it is what it is right now. That's what the demand is. Now, what will happen in the future? Again, I don't enjoy it. I don't see the value in it. So it's just not something that I'm gonna keep buying and flipping it and reselling it but I'm not going to be holding a lot of it and investing in it. People who do invest in a lot of it, I hope it works out for them. I hope they make a lot of money. I've never been anti that. I'm anti the people who tell you that you'll definitely make money and that it's a guaranteed. I'm on your side. I hope it goes up. I hope you continue to make money. I don't think I always did a good enough job because of my frustration with that, articulating my stance. We'll see. It wouldn't surprise me if I think extremes would surprise me. If that box goes to $2,500 in a year, that would shock me. If that box goes to $100 in a year, that would shock me. But that's kind of obvious, an obvious thing to say. I don't have any crystal ball. I'll never pretend that I do. Sorry that I can't, give more. Let me see if I can say anything else, interesting or useful. I've been tracking it for a long time. I'm very interested in the set. I think that the set's important. It was one of the sets I did a deep dive into this month. I think there are certain sets from every area that are interesting to track long term. This is going to be the main set. This and probably Celebrations will be interesting, but I think this really, stands alone to me as sort of the main set to watch. Just from a if you're curious about Pokemon and you're interested about sort of the general health of that Sword and Shield era and how much really is out there and who was buying it and how much does the interest really stay in that, you know. Um yeah, it's very interesting. Like there was a time where Vivid Voltage was the greatest set of all time. Amazing rares, the coolest cards of all time, right? Um Demand shifts around a lot and it can shift real fast. You know, Evolution's the greatest set of all time, jumps up to $1,000 a box. Everyone says it's going to go to 2,500, stays stagnant for a few years, basically goes down a bit, stays about stagnant. Maybe it's come up. Maybe it's over 1,000 now. I'm not sure. I haven't looked. The last sale I sold of that was probably like around like 800 or something. Hidden Fates, the greatest set of all time, forever going to go up. Hidden Fates ETB is the best thing you could invest in. I think those sat at like $150 for 3 years, right? Like, went down to, I was buying them for like 120. People were selling them in person, for 120. Usually when stuff online selling at like 150, there's usually people trying to offload it to people like me at like 130, 140, 120 even, if they really want to get rid of it and have a lot of it. People gave up on it, right? I think I've heard that that's been like tracking up recently. Again, I'm not up to date on every number, every single thing. I'd have to take a look exactly, but in a very short period of time, Evolving Skies, on the other hand, like when I bought my cases, it was $92 a box. And since then, the history of it has been very interesting, right? Jumped to 140, then fell back to 92, then jumped to 180, then fell back to 140, then all of a sudden jumped up to like, what, 360 or something, 380, then crept up to like 420, 440, hit a high at 460, came back to 380, now is above 500. How could any person in all humility like have any sort of sense of what's going to go on with that box next? Like it's kind of a mind boggling. Like if you have a strong premonition out there and you're making unless you are planning on doing a massive buyout or have some sort of like, plan to specifically or insider knowledge, the best you can do, I think, is just watch it, be interested in it, learn from it, try to understand it, try to understand why. Um, you know, Hopefully do a better job predicting things in the future. But again, there's going to be lots of things that just are never going to make sense to you, and you should never invest in them. And there's so many ways to make money, and there's so many ways to options in life that I wouldn't get hung up on things that don't make sense to you. You should never invest in anything that doesn't make sense to you, or even flip or resell unless the margins are really good, because it makes that item more likely. It's more likely that that item has some sort of weird something, you know. The other, but the longer it maintains itself, and the longer the more likely it is that you are just not the buyer for that. I'm just not ever the buyer for this. The buyer for this, and the reason these are going up, is because of the gamblers. And I'm not saying that negatively. Like people who are the consumers and the gamblers, and they're opening enough of it that it keeps going up. Or it's investors, and if it's investors, bad news for that set is all I can say, But if it's rippers and people continue to rip it, and again at $14 a price, a pack, I sell Evolving Skies packs all the time. You know what packs I don't sell? $50 packs, $60 packs. Like those packs sell much slower. Now they sell, but the gambling on that's much harder. They're weird, sort of interesting price points. And then of course there's also there's the whole argument always that, well, booster boxes can go up a lot in value, even if the expected value is really bad and they're not fun to open. And it's like, well, that is you can find really good examples of that, right? Like from the black and white era, for example, sets that like were just very relatively low printed sets, and there were enough collectors out there, sealed collectors, right? But sets like these, if I had to put a bet on it, it's not the collectors of that sealed product that is going to make that product valuable. It's the gamblers, it's the rippers, it's the ones who want to constantly open packs and want to open that set at that price. Now, if enough of those people open up the product over many years, over time, or even over just a few years, if it's enough of it, it could decimate the supply. And then you get to a point where even if the expected value is super low on the box, people aren't buying it anymore to open. People are buying it to just put up on a shelf because like, ooh, it's an expensive, cool box and it's a cool display piece. No idea. I would try to understand all of those things, but when I invest in something, I want to have more of a I don't want it to be a coin flip or it to be a or certainly to go off, which is my big bugaboo, right? Past price history as sort of predicting future price history. That's a big bugaboo of mine. I learned very early from my financial advisor father that is the worst way to invest is to start with there. You gotta, the best way to invest is narratives and understanding what's going on. Right. And now you do that by looking at the numbers and the data, but then you're trying to craft a narrative, craft a story around it. Now, many times your narrative and your stories could be wrong and then you're going to do very badly. But anyway, that's your edge. Versus other people is, are you good at doing that? Scared money don't make money. We need an evolution style video on ES. Yeah, that would be the way to like push it down, right? If I say it's time to invest, then it's time to get out. Some people talking about just the different anniversaries and like which anniversaries will be bigger. Interesting conversations for sure. Let's see. As this is the issue. Oh, this is to catch them all collectible. Sorry, I thought this was to me. They're having a conversation. This issue. Anyway, it sounds like you guys are having a good a high level, probably a bit above my head conversation on that. Jake, what do you make of the individual shilling the Lugia and the Magikarp? I commented on this one a bit earlier, Timmy. You might have asked this question like even before. I don't even know. I know I talk forever sometimes on earlier questions. But yeah, I sort of answered it before if you want to, look back. Let's see. When you guys mention you need inventory, does it mean you buy cards not necessarily to make profit, but just for the sake of selling and keep activity? Great question. So ideally, no, right? Ideally, like the main goal is to always be putting all of my money to work in things that I'm going to make a profit on. But there is something to be said about building your eBay store or building or having good stuff in your eBay store or in your showcase that brings people over either in person at shows or online, that brings people over. And then maybe they what brings them over is something that you don't make any money on, but then they stay to buy something else that you do make some money on, theoretically. The other thing is for the algorithm to get more, that would be an eBay thing. The other thing could be for building up your what's it called? My God, my brain after this amount of time. I have to stop soon. It's 10. This is when I said I was going to stop, but we're not even close to done. We're at 9:30. We're not so bad. We're at 9:35 in the questions. So that's That's only 25 minutes behind. Not so bad. um, what was I saying? Yeah. So for feedback. So another reason would be to try to get more good feedback on your eBay page. Maybe you're trying to get to like top rated seller. There's some sort of selling metric you're trying to get. So you need some good sales. Maybe you got some bad reviews and you need to get your thing back up. So you just want more sales. You want more good experiences. Another thing can just be like getting your eBay sales up enough to the point where maybe you can get some sort of partnership or some sort of deal with eBay or another platform. The more you sell there, the more money that you make for them, even if you're not making money, and maybe that serves you well in that relationship in the long run. So those would be all of the reasons. And then the last one is just like, isn't about making money. For me, I want people to have a good time when they come. I want people to find, particularly in person, vending for me is a lot about it's fun. And when they come over to my showcase, whether it's a kid or an adult my age or, someone a lot older than me, like there's going to be stuff in there that's going to make them sounds cheesy, but just like make them smile, make them get excited. Just like how I get excited when I go up to people's showcases and I see cool cards from all different eras. So there are times when I'm super low on some stuff and I would prefer to be able to buy it low and then make some money. But have been times where just because I want some cool different things in my showcase that I pay 100% or whatever, or pay 85% and then I sell it for 85%, or pay 80% and sell it for 80%, or even pay 75% and then sell it for 75%. So Jake, how do you quantify qualitative data for investing in collectibles? How much weight do you put in experience over great quantitative data? Ideally, both are highly correlated. Taking me back to statistics in grad school, right? How do we measure quantify? Oh my God, my brain tonight. How do we manage qualitative data versus quantitative data? Both you can measure, right? And you can uh, um, uh, I think with qualitative data, a lot of times people don't measure it well. So they don't like if you get lots and lots of qualitative data from lots and lots of sources and measure it in a smart way, put it together in a smart way, it can be strong, right? I think a lot of people have an easier time doing that with like massive amounts of quantitative data, and a lot of like qualitative data is really like one person said this, but it's a really small sample size because they don't sell that much, right? So that's what I would say is like, um, uh, good data is good data, and the more experienced, like the more times that data is repeated, whether or not it's qualitative or quantitative, the better that data is going to be. And then some human experiences and some things are going to be better described through qualitative data, and some things are going to be better described through quantitative data. So, yeah. Hopefully that makes sense. That might be like an answer that like statistics people or math people really get, where others are like, that was not detailed at all, and I don't understand what you're saying. Um, Dr. Light says, noticing a lot of Japanese vintage slabs are still dropping in price. Thoughts on buying the dip now, or would you say it's too soon? So the truth is, I never bought a lot of Japanese vintage slabs because I always liked, and when we talk about vintage, I'm really talking about WotC. Like I had some, and I generally the ones like I would pick up cards when I just felt like it was just like, this is ridiculously cheap, like below the cost of grading for like a really cool holo or something. Over the years, there were times when you get PSA 10s for $10. There were times I was buying Neo Rev holos. I think I got like is it Neo Rev? Now I'm forgetting. well, it's not Neo Rev in Japanese, but like what, Neo 3, Neo 2, there's Neo 1, Neo 2, Neo 3, Neo 4. It's like Light to Darkness is the Neo Destiny. God, what's the, anyway, whatever. I haven't thought about this stuff in a little bit. But there were times like when you could buy it for that, right? So still, prices have gone up a decent amount. With the Japanese vintage market, what I've noticed, let me say a couple of things. Okay. What I've noticed. One thing is, let's talk about the rare parts of the Japanese market, the vintage market, and then the less rare. And I'll even give you an answer on some of the middle layer stuff, which may not be what you're asking on, but might be interesting to some people. So, and again, this is an overview of someone who's been engaged in these markets for many years and kind of comes in and out of them intensely. So, I might not be up on all of the latest trends, so forgive me, but I'll give my best shot. So what I have seen is that, so the Japanese shinings, let's start with the Neo-Japanese shinings. Those are the rarest, the hardest to pull Japanese vintage cards, okay? Versus the regular holo where there's one in every pack, other than in base set, and you got 60 packs per box. So there's a lot of those holos are being pulled out of every box, versus the English. Part of what can make, and probably has likely made those always a lot cheaper, probably just a lot more of them. A lot more of them probably is probably the simplest answer. And the reason there's like not that many graded or a lot less graded is simply because they just have never been able to get to a high enough price. And then every time they go up at all, a lot more get graded, pushes the price back down, and now they're not worth grading anymore. So people stop grading them. When I buy collections and when I buy lots of stuff, I still buy lots of vintage Japanese holos that have chances to grade 9s and 10s. Rarely do I ever buy English. I'll just put out that point with that. But going to the Japanese shinings, recently, there have been a lot of Japanese shinings coming onto the market through some different selling platforms that had bought a lot. So it's kind of an interesting moment on those. The as well as some of the Japanese crystals. However, prices have been pretty strong on those outside of those auctions, and for the most part. And I've noticed over time that the crystals in particular have done really well relative to their English counterparts. Like they've really grown in popularity over time and have gotten like a lot closer than they were at one point. Whereas if you look at if you take like a PSA 10 first edition, whatever, the original Moonbryon, let's take the Umbreon, and then you take the Japanese, I'm too lazy right now to do it, but I really should pull up like Pokemetrics or something, and I should pick one that has like the exact same PSA 10 pop. But I'm sure there's a lot more Japanese Umbreon PSA 10s than English PSA 10 first edition ones, because that one doesn't work because the Umbreon is valuable. And even in Japanese, that Umbreon is probably worth like what, $200-$300 or something in PSA 10, making it worth it to grade it. But if we picked a less popular Pokemon, it might be closer in pop, but the price is going to be massively different. Whereas if you look at the Japanese and the English, the pattern has been a little bit different. The pattern is closed over time, the value of those, whereas the value on the English to Japanese have actually grown, have actually gotten larger, which is interesting. Now we can theorize that, well, that's just because there's just so many more of those regular Japanese holos. And it's not that Japanese cards are less popular. In fact, they've increased in popularity relative to English cards over the last few years, including in the vintage market. That's clearly true on the modern side and the middle era side, which we can talk about. But on the vintage side, that's clearly true. The issue is just there's so many more of those regular holos than your first edition WotC holos, and they grade easier on average. You have centering issues for sure, but the backs are just way better. They're often very clean, and there can be some issues on the holofoil, but it's way better. Way less print lines, scratching, etc. So it might just be as simple as that. It's like, keep it simple, stupid. That's all just guessing. I don't know if that's true, but that could be the reason. Now, When you look at the prices of the vintage Japanese packs, though, it becomes really interesting because it's like the vintage Japanese sealed packs are quite expensive. Now, part of that it can be we can say, well, they all have a hollow in every pack. So people like opening them. They're a good gamble because even though you lose money on every pack you open on, you ain't making money unless you hit the key card and grade it a 10. And then even then you might lose money on some of the sets. I mean, it's crazy out there on some of those like Neo sets. Like like the expected value is so bad. Um, but at least you get something. And people like that. Um, I would always be amazed. I mean, there was a time when streamers were like ripping through Japanese because it was like, well, we have 60 packs. It's a cheaper box. I get 60 packs and there's a hollow in every pack. So I can like, everyone feels like they're a winner instead of like 1 out of 3 people feel like they're a winner, even though everyone's a loser except me financially, in this situation, pretty much. It's a much easier sort of sell to their customers. So that's why maybe the packs have been able to retain their value despite the cards struggling. I don't know, guys. There are things that are way weirder to me, like how cheap some Japanese singles are. Like when we talk about like X and Y, like into sun, like even some Sun and Moon and Black and White versus how hard it is to find the sealed product or how expensive some of those specialty product sets are. And then like some of the cards from inside are so cheap. Like those make no, like there are things that make way less sense to me. Let me put it that way. But it's like I just go like this, for a lot of time. I mean, when you start looking at other hobbies, guys, this hobby makes way more sense and is way more optimized than most hobbies. Most hobbies, it's like all just price memory, and because there's so few people and the stuff is so rare, and there are no influencers. There's no big people out there to tell you buy this, buy this, buy this, and then everyone coalesces around the Moonbryon or coalesces around something, and then there's some sort of like optimization happens around it, and businesses react to it. It's a way more rational market than most markets in this Wild West space, believe it or not. So I love the vintage Japanese stuff. I've sold. I don't collect much of it because it doesn't provide a huge chase for me when we're talking about the WotC stuff outside of like the shinings and the crystals. But when we talk about middle era, I like the cards way better. Like when we talk about like Black and White, just as a collector, like they're just so cool. The Japanese full arts from that era, from me. Again, now we're getting into totally subjective space. Like, you should collect what you like. But like to me, they're just really cool looking. The boxes are nowhere. They're easy to grade for sure. Now, of course, those cards have gotten a lot more expensive. I mean, there was a time when it was a lot crazier. It's less crazy now. I mean, I've seen most people don't know, but there are cards like let's take a lot of those key Black and White Japanese PSA 10s. Those cards were sold for like there were some that were sold for like $400 and they're now selling for $1,100. Like a year and a half ago, we're selling for $400. Now they're selling for $1,100. There were periods in there where level X's and primes are a really good example. Were like really dirt cheap, like $50 to $100. They went to like $400, $500 in PSA 10. I mean, there's been quite a bit of movement and speculation and investing or collecting in these smaller niche spaces that I don't ever really see YouTubers talk about. At least bigger YouTubers. I'm sure people in our group and I know there's lots of people who know all this stuff here, and there are people who are far more. I was just talking to like Jake Smith in Houston. He knows a lot more, him and Colson and all those people. They're really up to date on some of this stuff. They know the pop reports of all sorts of things, in those areas. I have more of a general sense of sort of, I try to keep a general sense of everything, and then once in a while I do deep dives. It's part of why I do enjoy running the Patreon and the Discord. It's good for me because it forces me every 3 months to like put in like 20 hours of work into like analyzing a certain part of the market, which is good, which is healthy for me in my own speculating and investing. And then obviously making videos like this, I actually, hopefully actually know what I'm talking about instead of just saying the nonsense. Anyway. I have not. And I don't particularly have a goal in playing like the main event or anything. I used to play online, like multiple at once. And I used to, once in a while, I would play in a tournament, like in another country, because it was kind of cool to like go travel there and then also play a tournament, but never did the main event. Thought about it when I was younger, but do I think that whoever's buying up all these $30 PSA 10 modern cards will be laughing their way to the bank one day? I hope so. I think it'll be dependent on, is this a low period in Pokemon right now, or is this a high period? Are we still in a period, like a middle period, where like things are going to get way more and there's going to be way more people in some years from now? Then I think like pretty much everything that's reasonably desirable, and I would say like most $30 cards, if we're talking like ultra modern, they're not awful. Like they're PSA 10s of like hits, decent hits. I mean, you can get for $30, you can even get like Sun and Moon, like full arts PSA 10 for like of decent characters, for 30 to 50. I mean, these are not, now it depends what you're buying for 30. Now, if you're buying something that, there are cards that sell for 30 sometimes. I mean, there are cards that I see sell for 100 sometimes in auctions, where I'm just like, is this Shill? Like, what's happening? Where it's like a $1 card going for $100 or something, but a $3-4 card that's like really hard to grade from a really expensive set going for like 30 to $50, like, I don't know, like that could be $100 card, $150 card. I don't know if that's going to be laughing their way to the bank money. I'm not, I wouldn't expect let me put it this way. I would not expect, it's not a get rich quick scheme. It's not how I would get rich, but there's a big difference between like getting rich and building a business around something, and like, you can't make money on this, or this person's an idiot, for buying this, or, it's a moron. This is all trash. It's going to go in a landfill. Right. Now, could a lot of this stuff just, end up as the junk slabs as people never want? It's possible. I would say that I've been pleasantly surprised that this hobby has not yet turned into that. And you have right now, and maybe it's the gambling, but like you have right now, like, so let's talk about some of these mystery box, products, like the amount of graded cards that these companies are grading all of the time for these, even just for these mystery, like, and these are like these are like $1-2 cards mostly, right? Being put in slabs that are now like $30 each, $15 each, $10 each, whatever, $20 each. Maybe they're charging $30, the average hits $20 out of it, whatever it is, that's a lot. Like those cards, whatever that is, those are a lot more like, than your like better $30 to $50 ones. Like I think there's a big range of what I would consider like cool, decent cards that decently hard to grade from decently expensive sets that were probably not printed that much, all the way to, what? Jake, we heard your predictions on Pokemon, but what about Dan's beard? Do you predict any upsides or trends on this? I think he's going to shave it all off. That's what I think. I think he's going to scam everyone, a ton of people, and then he's going to shave it all off, have a new name, start fresh, start scamming all over again. That's the plan. Thoughts on recent crypto rise and potential trickle down to Pokemon collectibles? I know I'm surprised by the crypto rise, to be honest. Listen, I don't know. Is it? So I don't know that much about it. I'll be completely honest with you. I just heard about this, like, for someone who's supposed to like know markets well, whatever, BS, whatever. Like I just heard about this like a week ago or something like that. That it's like at a new high right now, right? Or like Bitcoin, at least. Is it all of these cryptos, or is it just Bitcoin? I don't really know. I don't know. Speculators speculate. Whatever. It's not for me. Oh, but your question, will it trickle down? This was something that was talked a lot about in the past, and it was like there was a period where it seemed like people like crypto and Pokemon were trending the same way, and lots of money was coming in to Pokemon from crypto and going from Pokemon back to crypto, and there were theories about I don't know, I don't really know, like tax avoidance or the same age group, your 30-year-olds kind of driving each sort of thing, and they like these things and they like these types of alternative assets that are more risky and more fast paced and you can make more money and lose more money on. And now that that's gone up, are a lot more of those types of people going to have money, and are they going to put it back into something like this? I don't know. Could be. I don't think it's I don't think it's silly. I don't think that's a silly, that makes sense. I'm not sure what the odds are. And I certainly have no idea why crypto's back up. I have no clue. I don't know anything about it, really. Do you like Yu-Gi-Oh? Any favorite characters or cards? I was a big so Yu-Gi-Oh was my favorite when I was a kid. That was like my first favorite anime. Um, I used to watch the every week, like the Saturday morning, right? Saturday morning cartoons. I was gonna say Sunday for some reason for a sec. Not Sunday. Saturday morning cartoons. I used to watch that every Saturday, and I would really look forward to it. And that was back in the day when TV, like you actually had to wait for episodes, and you could just binge watch the whole thing. So I loved Yu-Gi-Oh from that. I never played the card game, and I never collected the card game. I was sort of like out of cards. I was a little bit too old for Yu-Gi-Oh in the sense that I think Yu-Gi-Oh got more popular a few years with kids generally a few years younger than me. And so I never did the cards. I never even owned a Yu-Gi-Oh card as a kid. So I don't have the same connection to the Yu-Gi-Oh cards that I do Pokemon cards at all. However, what is cool about Yu-Gi-Oh cards is like they do remind me of the anime because they were actual cards in that show, and it works nicely with these cards. So yeah, it's something I'm sure as a non-sports card collector, I am sure I'm going to eventually, not sure, but I likely will eventually try to complete like all the major sets. I have not yet. It's a lot of money. They're expensive, and I just don't like them enough at this point to pay those prices when I still have so many other things I like more. I want more. Like I am so far away from completing all sorts of other collection goals, but I do eventually plan on collecting that. And the one thing I did go after early was some of the Bandai stuff because it was just like really cheap, and I thought it was really cool. And I thought like it was a good deal, and this stuff seems pretty hard to grade and pretty rare. And I thought getting in on this now, like it's not that much money, and I like the stuff, and it could go up a lot in the future maybe, or be hard to find, or I don't know. I think there's an argument in Patreon in like the weekly office hours. We've definitely had this conversation, a few times over the years of just sort of, is Yu-Gi-Oh really undervalued? The pop reports are really low. The characters are really iconic. Like it just seems really cheap, but it's such a much smaller IP. But the people involved, the people who are buying it are younger and don't have the same money as some of the Pokemon people. So maybe when they get older, they're going to put more, but maybe it won't be multi-generational, so it won't be as good. Those are in quick succession, the pros and the negatives, which leave me to thinking like probably the prices of those are probably relatively where they should be versus Pokemon, and hopefully they'll both go up over time. I don't know. What's up, Zach? Hope you're doing well, man. It was nice spending some time with you at Collecticon. Don't work too hard. Get some rest. Take care of yourself. We don't want you burning out on us. Was nice meeting you in Dallas. Oh, hey, Sterling. Was nice meeting you in Dallas. Glad you made your flight. Look forward to talking with you and Dylan. Super nice spending some time with you as well. Thank you so much for helping us out. And yeah, you seem like just super nice guy. I'm sure we'll get to see each other again and know each other more over time. It was a pleasure. So I made it to the end of chat, and I'm only 26 minutes over when I wanted to stop. So I'm going to stop there. Appreciate all you guys as always. Thanks for supporting me in any way that you do. Hoping to continue to meet new people and meet more people over time. And, I'm going to keep doing my thing. As I always said, I'm going to keep trying to expand my business. I don't really want to use this platform to expand that, although it's sort of like, why shouldn't I? How can I not? I guess I'll quickly say, like, if you want to sell stuff to me, if you have collections, feel free to reach out to me on Discord, on Instagram. I'm always buying, always looking for new connections with people. If you want to consign, I probably will make a video on this channel on consigning in the future. I am then probably going to not talk much about either of those things again. But this was always my fear, Dan, of starting a business, is I'm corrupted. No, I'm mostly teasing. But anyway, really appreciate all of you guys. Like, it's really great to see a bunch of the same names from years now that we've been like doing this. And, for those who I've met in person, obviously it's always great, and hope to meet more of you in person over time. It still certainly makes me feel good when I meet people for the first time at shows who come up and they've been like, just like watch your channel for years, or even just watch like off and on, for years. And thanks. Like, it's been positive for me. And like, I enjoy hearing your viewpoints, and it's just like, that's sweet, man. Thank you. That feels good to hear. I'm glad, there are people out there who have felt that way. So hopefully we'll make another. I want to start bringing some people on the channel. So I think the next videos I will do will either be some of those like call-in chats I did before, where I start bringing people on again, or what else? What was I gonna say? Gosh, sorry, I'm tired. Lost my train of thought. Okay, never mind. I think I'll end it there because I'm very exhausted. And I don't think I have any other news to report. Just that, I'll have more people. I'm gonna try to bring some new people on the channel who've never been on before. Introduce you guys to some new voices, some new cool people in the hobby that you'll be able to recognize out and about. Just people I think are, just really trustworthy, great guys who just treat people really well. So hopefully you guys will look forward to that, and talk to you all again soon. All right, everyone have a good rest of their night. Take care. Bye-bye.